Yo, hello, we are back. We have concluded another week of Pokemon VGC gameplay, and we're going to be going over a lot of teams here today. But to start off, I do want to mention we do have pretty low watch time for subscribers, so if you like this kind of content or you just want to support us at the channel in general, it would help just click that subscribe button, Thank you for all the support. But yeah, to get right to it, we're going to start with talking about the Nino Pokebro tournament. As you can see, the footage on screen as well is actually the tournament we won, and we were able to take the first tournament down. And we did it in a bit of an interesting fashion using a Abomasnow and Cetitan. Two Pokemon that have largely not seen as much use as they possibly could. And we were actually able to win the first big open sheet tournament with that core. Most notably, this tournament was best of 1 swish, best of 3 top cut, but it was the only tournament this weekend that actually used the format that live events will use, in that everyone knew each other's teams. There was all open sheet for the whole tournament. We got to see all the options before the game. But yeah, let's look at the team. The Abomasnow, Cetitan, Indeedee, Annihilape, Hydreigon, Armorogue. We're going to have another video on this team exclusively on tomorrow, where we actually release the rental code and all the details then. I'll go into more thorough detail. But basically, this team essentially has so many different modes to it. You have the Cetitan is Abomasnow mode, where you can play fast with Cetitan and get KOs on most of the meta, because a lot of the metagame can't really outspeed you after Slush Rush. And since there's a lot of Pokemon like Garchomp, Hydreigon, that really, this Murkrow, all these Pokemon that don't like to take the hits of the Ice-type Pokemon, just having Cetitan be able to just KO them outright and just remove them instantly is really nice. And meowscarada is another example, having the Cetitan to be faster than meowscarada, get a crash off, just straight up KO it. And then the backup modes being Indeedee, Armorogue, where you have this Trick Room, Side Spam kind of mode. You also have Hydreigon to boost Tailwind, so you can play every kind of speed possible. And then you also have another mode with Annihilape plus Abomasnow, where you have Set of Auraville, and then you start bulking up. And eventually create this win condition where Annihilape will ultimately take over the game. And yeah, that's the general idea from that team. But we've also saw some interesting teams as well. We actually saw Artcar use Tyranitar Lyncanroc. So we were able to see both weather teams in the finals. And notably, Tyranitar Lyncanroc is a team that we actually covered last week, thanks to Banfox winning an Italian local with it. And this one actually features Toxtricity as well. But the general idea is you just have the Tyranitar Lyncanroc mode go in, and then you have Dondozo this clean up in the back. And you also have the Maushold to do a lot of damage as well, creating this very offensive and aggressive core that can just break through teams thanks to the power of Rock Slide. Notably, of course, they didn't have double substitute. It was just a protect on the Dondozo. And they told us that during the finals as well. And then we get Pengi in top 3, another Dondozo team. This one featuring this Hydreigon and Armorogue, and playing a more balanced kind of traditional comp where you have 2 modes. Dondozo Tatsugiri is a backup. And then Joe UX9 actually finished 4th place with a King Gambit Skeleturge kind of balanced team, utilizing Maushold and Tailwind. Actually, not using Tailwind, he used this AV Hydreigon Bulk, using King Gambit as an endgame win condition, and Skeleturge is another endgame win condition that's using that pure power to set up games where Skeleturge can actually just break a board. And we'll link Joe UX9's YouTube in the description as well, and I know his team is on Patreon, but you would have to subscribe to his Patreon in order to get it. And if you want to, we'll have the link to the YouTube as well, where you can just find the Patreon from there. And we also saw Danelli using the team we saw from Giovanni P. Killer Bear in the tournament last weekend as well, where you just have very balanced kind of core on Tyranitar, Garchomp, Corvi. That frankly was a core in Sword and Shield metagame too, and it's good to see it just get some placements again with the gold T-Tar, Corvi, Rotom Heat. Then Joan Garcia is then we start seeing the Golden Go Murkrows. All 3 Golden Go Murkrows was losing very early in top 8 in the best of 3 phase, which is a trend you'll actually notice in a lot of these tournaments. That Golden Go Murkrow actually didn't perform nearly as well as it could have, considering the volume of Golden Go Murkrows that were in the tournament. But yeah, we can see this from VGC PokePaste, where they cataloged all of the stats. Big thank you to Evan as well for all this very great information. But yeah, you can see Golden Go 102 times used, only 13 in top cut. Hydreigon 98, 15, and then Murkrow had 83 usage, 11 in top cut, and then still can't place in like top 4 or finals or finish it. I do think the notable things as well is actually the amount of annihilape that are in, the amount of mouse holds. Those are very strong Pokemon that I think will continue to like pick up as we go. And also the amount of King Gambits in there is pretty interesting as well. Like, King Gambit's not a Pokemon I exactly expect to continue to have this kind of success, but it is cool to see. And Skeledirge, also another starter that's doing pretty well as well, along with meowscarada taking the top place on uses in top cut. Which meowscarada is the most notable of the top 5, because you look at the rest of the top 5, right? You get the 100 from Golden Go, the 90 from Hydreigon, the Murkrow with 83, the Garchomp with 82 usage, and then you go to meowscarada with 56. And yet meowscarada, 15 of those meowscarada teams made it. And that's like such a significant amount of meowscarada players making top cut comparatively to how many were played. And especially with that kind of usage as well, this really shows meowscarada is just a genuinely really good Pokemon. It'll be interesting to see if that like trend continues, because I do think a lot of people weren't giving meowscarada the proper credit. Like, it is kind of an Urshifu light, but also consider Urshifu as a broken Pokemon and having access to knockoff, a move that a lot of dark types don't have. Like, for example, Weavile, Ice Dark type, doesn't have knockoff, and that's like such a big trade-off, is just the power of knockoff on these dark type physical attackers. And since the distribution is so small, meowscarada being a one that can actually learn knockoff is actually really huge. And that's an aside from this how powerful of a move Flower Trick is. Because you know the Dondozo strat, if they get Flower Trick, they just drop, they have to always Terrasilize. They don't want to get knocked off either. Golden Go doesn't want to get knocked off. Hydreigon doesn't want to get Play Roughed. Garchomp doesn't want to get like Flower Tricked. If it Terras, it doesn't want to get Play Roughed either. Like, none of these Pokemon really like getting hit by meowscarada. And that's something that's like really important in making meowscarada like a really good Pokemon on all these kind of different teams. Because always able to get like some kind of value into basically every matchup where there's always something that doesn't want to take a hit from meowscarada. And that's very important to keeping that Pokemon incredibly viable. And notably, it actually counters a Pokemon that also has seen a decent uptick, and that's the concept of screens plus annihilape. Because if you go screens plus annihilape, meowscarada can crit through you, this OHKO you, and this make all your bulking up, all your reflex light screens useless. It can also take away your lefties, can take away your goggles with knockoff as well. And this be a very annoying Pokemon. And that's why we actually saw a lot of annihilapes go the fire typing, is so they can resist the Flower Trick that would normally just like outright KO them. And that's something we're going to see more and more with annihilape, just to avoid being burned and avoid being that crit from the meowscarada, and trying to like adapt against that innovation. Yeah, to continue, we also had the Taiwan Regionals Championships. Unfortunately, I don't have the full footage on this one, but you see the trend of a lot of Armorogue. I think Armorogue is a ridiculously powerful Pokemon in this format, and it's cool to see it just like really pop off. And this is a tournament we actually saw something rather interesting. There's a lot of Murkrow teams, but the one that actually wins is the one without Golden Go and that used meowscarada instead. Like, meowscarada just having that ability to just be faster than all these Pokemon. If you look at like the other Tailwind teams, and this is like such a significant advantage for how Tailwind plays, since meowscarada is just faster than all of these Pokemon. Like, the Hydreigon is faster than the Hydreigon, faster than Garchomp, faster than Golden Go, faster than Sylvan Hari. And then here it's faster than Dragonite, Hydreigon, Golden Go, Annihilape, and Armorogue. meowscarada was always able to get like significant value in this tournament, and thus outpace these Tailwind teams thanks to having its own Tailwind as well next to it. And like Mousehold hits as well. meowscarada, you had the Side Spam for the E-Speed stuff. Like, it was just a really well-constructed team, and it's cool to see a Murkrow team that actually foregoed Golden Go and did significantly better because of it foregoing the Golden Go. And that was really cool. That was really cool. And on to the next tour. There was also a New England tournament for $1,000. Grassroots tournament, 41 players, ultimately being won by John Valentino. And this tournament also brings some interesting things to talk about. And the fact that Kilowattrel Garchomp was actually the team that took the tournament. I think Kilowattrel is a Pokemon that is generally pretty underrated by a lot of people right now. Because this, I've talked about this in our metagame recap video where we like ranked every Pokemon in Series 1. But the scariest thing for Tailwind sometimes is counter Tailwind. Like Murkrow can set Tailwind on you, but if you also have the Tailwind and you are the faster Pokemon, like in the Tailwind trade, Kilowattrel actually comes off pretty well. Like if Murkrow leads into Kilowattrel, they both quick Tailwind, then the second turn, Kilowattrel will just be faster than the Murkrow, and it also resists the Golden Go's output. And that creates this kind of situation that's not like exactly the most positive for the Murkrow player, and this the Tailwind trade. And we saw it come up a very decent amount too. Jeremy Oltiz ultimately playing in that matchup, and he actually won against that matchup in finals versus Rod McNeely and Daishu. And I think there's another important thing to talk about with Daishu's team in particular, is this is a core concept of like how hyper offense can play as well. Even though fake out hasn't been the most common directly, this having that ability to wall out any potential fake out, having the ability to imprison Trick Room with Ferrodraft and taking advantage of Ferrodraft's coverage, because this is some information we actually do have in the core. This was a Terra Fire Blast Ferrodraft, and that was like a very big part of how he was actually able to get through that tournament and get some like big value against Golden Go as a matchup. And you see some of the items here. And actually doing pretty well. Which the VOD is also up in this Twitch channel that we'll link as well, so you can watch this gameplay yourself and see how it all ends up going, and see how all of it goes on the Battle Room Twitch channel. Oh, and the last thing I want to talk about this tour is actually Mike D'Angelo's team, where he uses multiple layers of fake outs and setup plus Revival's Blessing. Because the key mechanic of Dondozo Tatsugiri is once the Dondozo dies, then you just have like a little Tatsugiri, and it's kind of like bad, right? Losing the Dondozo is so bad for you. But thanks to having a move like Revival Blessing, you can Revival Blessing the Dondozo and then have it eat the Tatsugiri again. Of course, you can't revive Tatsugiri after, so you can't do like Suicide Tatsugiri, Revival Blessing, bring back the Tatsugiri, and have like +4 and everything Dondozo. But you can revive the Dondozo, and I think that's like the more important part to how the core works. So you can essentially just like have your Tatsugiri live the turn, have like the good old electric route, the Pawmot, just get the Revival Blessing off, revive it, and set up the game. And he also has multiple other setup options. You have the Quiver Dance on Volcarona, you have the Nasty Plot on the Golden Go, the little fake out on Grimmsnarl to help the setup as well. Like all these options to like facilitate this setup, and then have all these options to like revive your setup and make it set up again if they fail to deal with it the first time. And that's a very interesting concept that I think is really good, is this Pawmot plus setup, and Pawmot plus Dondozo is this a really strong concept that I think we're going to see a lot going forward, because Revival Blessing is just a sick move. And then for our next tournament we're going to talk about the Filipinas Got Pokemon tournament, where there was 35 players, the first local for Philippine, where we actually saw a similar story to some of the Italian locals and what Bandfox used, and what actually ended up getting second place in the Nino Pokeboro tournament too. I feel like we should actually open the Nino art card team again as well. Like this is core of like this Tyranitar plus Lyncanroc, and having the Dondozo Tatsugiri as a backup as well. Just seeing that get another top finish and ultimately winning a tour. But this one actually used Annihilape, and I don't know if it was a Final Gambit Annihilape. Okay, we actually have the teams here as well. This rental code if you want to try out this team. And yeah, it was the Choice Scarf Annihilape. Still using the AV Tyranitar as well, and Dragon typing on Dondozo instead of the Steel typing, and this taking advantage of the substitute. Safety Goggles on Tatsugiri is a choice that we also don't tend to see. There's generally pretty interesting move options, and a big congrats to them for winning this finals with a wild Dondozo Sandmere. And we also have the footage for this one as well, so if you want even more footage that you can look through for these tournaments, We'll have that in the description. You can actually watch that individually. But yeah, this was Dondozo, Tatsugiri plus Sandmere. And both of them had the same kind of sets. Though this one was actually Rest plus the Steel typing instead of the Dragon type one. And then use Citrus Berry plus Icy Wind instead of the Safety Goggles. So it's interesting to see like two different styles of the same team, both getting to the finals of the tournament. And ultimately the one that prevailed being the one with the Substitute and the Dragon type being in the Safety Goggles being this one. But overall, this is a cool thing to see these two different ways of playing the same team. And that's always something that makes Pokemon inherently very interesting. Even if someone has the same team, you're able to play it in so many different ways that even the same 6 Pokemon can have such a wide variety of sets. And that helps keep Pokemon like forever a very interesting game. And we also saw as well like the Flying Tyranitar. And then here, there's the Flying Tyranitar as well. Very, very interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. Are there any other differences worth noting? No, other than that, other than the Tatsugiri item and the Dondozo moveset, it was all pretty similar. Pretty similar. But regardless, this is very, very cool sets. And we can talk about the rest of the top cut as well. Multiple Dondozo Tatsugiris actually. All of top 4 was a Dondozo Tatsugiri battle. And funny enough, there's a Flamingo too, but it was not with the Dondozo Tatsugiri, but instead with Palafin and Volcarona. It was pretty cute, pretty cute. We see Sarawedge. Oh, we actually saw the Victory Road team that won last weekend. This ended up losing out to the Dondozo as well. So yeah, a lot of Dondozo. We see Toedscruel as well, Terranormal Dragonite. Palafin's losing out to the Dondozo. The meowscarada modes, meowscarada version Dondozo is losing to the Sand Dondozos with the Scarf Annihilape. And that's another interesting thing about the Annihilape versus meowscarada matchup. Even though I don't necessarily like Final Gambit as much, just having that ability to kind of have either Final Gambit or Bulk Up, and being the Scarf set means you actually do beat meowscarada very easily. But being the Bulk Up set means you actually kind of struggle into it a bit more, and you need to like speed control to outspeed and like Drain Punch it. That makes the environment a bit like interesting of how meowscarada plays into Annihilape. And it'll be interesting to see how like if more Scarf Annihilapes show up, if more different sets of Annihilapes show up against meowscarada, or if they just go like full bulk and start going to this like purely Terra Fire, so they always have an out into the meowscarada. It's a generally pretty interesting like development of the power of meowscarada, for sure. And we'll go on to our next tournament. We're going to be talking about the Italian tournament hosted by Pato. Nice, nice, nice. Actually won by Crocodile too. But yeah, this Murkrow was Golden Go, but this time we actually see it run with Crocodile. Crocodile being a Dark type Intimidate user. And actually Crocodile has like a unique usage, right? Because it's a Dark type, you're essentially reducing the slots that you have to use. Like normally this team has like Garchomp and Hydreigon, but being a Dark Ground type, you condense Garchomp and Hydreigon into Crocodile, and that opens them up to run more wider varieties of Pokemon. As we see the Rotom Heat, we see the Gastrodon and the Breloom. So using that condensing to essentially create more options for himself with Crocodile, create a Rotom Heat option, add that Breloom as well, and actually gain Gastrodon a tournament win. Which I always say Gastrodon's a Pokemon that will forever be viable, even if it doesn't see much play. And this seeing Gastrodon win again, let's go Slug. I imagine Gastrodon was essentially the Trick Room answer, because like you just have it use Yawn or use like Earth Power and this be bulky against Trick Room and cause problems that way. And we actually saw that matchup come in handy for finals, right? Because Gastrodon versus all the Armorogue, the Torkoal, the Psy Spam, yeah, the Hariyama and the King Gambit. So having that Gastrodon mode was just like indispensable to actually just helping him win against this whole Psy Spam and barrage of fire types. And Crocodile being a ground dark type also comes in handy a lot here, because it has the ground moves to hit the fire core of Torkoal and Armorogue, but also has the dark typing, so the Armorogue can't just like expanding force it, and the Indeedee can't just psychic it down. So that also is another scenario where the Crocodile is pretty valuable in how it actually boosted this team to its victory. But yeah, we see some other interesting things. We see Weavile on a Golden Go Murkrow team. Weavile is actually a Pokemon with very good offensive typing. Unfortunately, does not have a good dark type move. And we were talking with meowscarada, there's the value of having knockoff. Weavile doesn't get knockoff. It doesn't get like throat chop anymore either. The only dark move you have being Night Slash is just so insignificantly weak that Weavile becomes like a bit harder to play. But still, this is the general value of having the fastest fake out in the meta, being the fastest ice Pokemon. You can use Oko meowscaradas first. You can use Ice Shard to KO Murkrows. There's a lot of ways Weavile can still create value for itself in a game. And I imagine we actually saw it come in handy versus Murkrow, Hydreigon, Garchomp, and like Breloom. Because like you just have that ability to quick Ice Shard, they're dead. You quick Icicle Crash, dead. Night Slash, boom. Big hit on Golden Go. And that's a very valuable use case for Weavile. And it ultimately led them to have a better placement than all the other Murkrow teams, except the one that won with the Crocodile. And we also see the Cerulege, the Hydreigon, Mousehold, Golden Go, and Murkrow. And I do think Mousehold is a Pokemon that is a bit underrated in general. And another thing we actually see here that we saw in the Connecticut tournament is the Farigiraffe creating a kind of Trick Room mode. And this blocking the fake outs from the Talonflame, the Hydreigon, the Meowscarada. And that's like, Farigiraffe is a surprisingly decent Pokemon for both hard Trick Room, and it's also a decent Pokemon for these like hyper offense, kind of aggro Tailwind cores. So they always have an option to play to their aggression with Tailwind, and Farigiraffe actually isn't the slowest Pokemon, and has access to like great coverage like Dazzling Gleam, you have like Fire Blast, you have a lot of great offensive moves that help Farigiraffe really take advantage of every situation it may be in. And it's cool to see that show up on another Tailwind team. And then finally, we have the Victory Road Tournament, the next biggest tournament of this day, where we had like 400 people in. And we actually get to see Pawmot take it. We already got the Pawmot out. So the big information and takeaway from this is Pawmot and Dondozo are pretty powerful. They are indeed pretty powerful. You see this Pawmot taking away, getting this little top cut and finals victory, similar to Mike D'Angelo's team. Though interesting having a Torkoal. I kind of feel like the Torkoal Goth mode isn't necessary with this, but the Pawmot, Tatsugiri, the Dondozo puts Meowscarada is really the stuff that keeps it together, in my opinion. Unfortunately, we don't have like a rental, so we can't really see more info about this tournament, because this tournament was only open Terra typing, so the only stuff we would have is just the information on what Terra types they chose. And even then, that's not like exactly the most public info either, so we can't really gather too much here. But yeah, we see some other interesting developments as well. We see the Azumarill team in the bottom left with Chongjun, where he had Azumarill, Grim, Annihilape, Murkrow, Hydreigon, Amoonguss. Or essentially, if you can stop the Annihilape bulk up setup, he had the backup strat of another setup with Belly Drum Azu, and that was actually a pretty powerful way to take over games. And we see Maddie Morgan do a similar thing with Azu plus Annihilape setup. You had the Mousehold with Follow Me as well. That ultimately got in the top 4. And then we have Shohei Kimura using Tatsugiri, Dondozo, Francesco. Overall, pretty interesting stuff across the board. Oppo also using Volcarona, a Pokemon we talked about in our metagame recap, as a Pokemon that could potentially like show up a bit more. And it did show up a fair bit more. It's still not quite what I was hoping Volcarona could do, but it still had like pretty good results in general. But yeah, we can check out the team results and the usage stats here. The VPR, welcome to the Paldea tournament. And yeah, there's all the teams. Notably, Nick Navarre, actually, we see 2 Gothitels both in finals. Which Gothitelle is a very, very scary Pokemon in how it works. And Gothitelle is really always going to have that like big value as well. So, you know, this having the Terra Ghost, having the Terra Steel, having these like, this getting all the trap in, and then having mons like King Gambit, Arcanine Gyarados, and this throw like fake out, this going through rotation as well. But unfortunately, yet again, we don't have the movesets for them because VR chose to have Open Terra, not Open Team Sheet, which we'll probably see more Open Team Sheet tournaments in the future, but it makes this kind of hard to like really pass through all this information and get as much of a talking point as I can about it. But yeah, Adrian Hurley using the same team as like same kind of concept as Mike D'Angelo, where you have the fake out plus revival blessing, and you just bring back Dondozo, and that kind of creates some problems for the opponents. Also interesting using Terra Ghost on Meowscarada to avoid fake out, and Terra Dark on Gothitelle to avoid taunt. Nick's Gothitelle being Terra Steel was pretty interesting as well. Yeah, Matty Mogan in third place. We see the Mousehold Annihilape. Pretty interesting stuff. And also interesting, we see Kill-Watchful Garchomp more aggressively. I do think Kill-Watchful Garchomp's a bit underrated, because it actually, any counter Tailwind is good into Murkrow. Because like Murkrow is basically setting itself, it Tailwinds and it dies, or in this case like Foul Plays and Taunts. So if you have like multiple forms of like counter Tailwind into it, it can make how Murkrow plays very awkward. And Orochi is another person who takes advantage of it. And you'll probably notice with a lot of these teams as well, like Mons like Hydreigon getting Tailwind, Mons like Talon playing Kill-Watchful. Even Volcarona, for example, could have Tailwind here. But unfortunately, we don't know if it does or not. It could just be Quiver Dance, honestly. But Volcarona is a Pokemon with a lot of sets and actually has interesting moves in Struggle Bug. But yeah, the next team I kind of want to talk about here is actually Ren Chengfu's team, where he's just running like Rain, Barraskewda, and Palafin with Fairydraft. Yet again, using this like kind of Fairydraft to set up an alternate mode, while also still playing like hyper aggro with it. Because like the Palafin, Pelipper, Barraskewda team and like the Meowscarada, those are like four very aggressive Pokemon. And thanks to Fairydraft having like a very unique speed stat, is actually able to play around and help the team with get through the fake outs with his Armor Tail, and able to set up like Trick Room as well. Like it's actually like this is a pretty good approach, right? Like we can look at Fairydraft here. Its speed stat is not bad. Like you put it in Tailwind at base 60, it's actually going to outspeed a surprising amount of the meta. And it has like such a diverse move pool that it can act as both a Trick Room Mancer as itself. Like you can just put out like 97 or something and you'll outspeed like basically all the meta. Put out like 90, you're going to outspeed a lot of the meta too. Like it's this decent enough where you can actually put it in Trick Room and get decent results out of it. But yeah, Dazzle, you have you can go like Terra Blast for fire typing. I did say earlier that it's Fire Blast, but that was incorrect. It's not Fire Blast. I don't know why I thought it had Fire Blast. So I think it was just Terra Fire. But yeah, you have Trick Room. You have access to Imprison, so you can enable Hyper Offense more. Like Fairydraft is just a very good Pokemon, and this Armor Tail is a great ability. Even if Fake Out is not the most popular right now, there's still Pokemon like Terra Normal, E-Speed, Dragonite that you prevent just by having a Fairydraft. That Fairydraft can still like squeak out value somewhere. I do think Fairydraft is a bit of a underrated Pokemon that we may see, and like a wider variety of comps in the future. And we'll see if we ultimately end up seeing that. We'll see. Yeah, back to it. We see Marcus with a Dondozo Tatsugiri Talonflame alternate mode. More Annihilape. And Annihilape's a very strong Pokemon. And we also see Skeleturge getting a top result as well. Pazzer with a bulky stall team of Garganacl and Skeleturge. Which this team kind of fell through the wayside a bit. But Garganacl and Grim are the still really bulky. Skeleturge is very hard to break too. So this team still will exist and be hard to like play against in general, because like it's just so bulky. It is so bulky. And we actually see a player use Abomasnow here as well, going 8-1 with this no like other Snowmon, but using it simply for the Aurora Veil, which I think is also a pretty strong concept in itself. And we do see that again with Abomasnow and Annihilape, using Aurora Veil to set it up instead of Grimmsnarl. Because Aurora Veil gets both at once, and then you can just bulk up, and that can become very annoying. It's the team that we ultimately used in the tournament earlier as well with the Nino Pokebros tournament. But yeah, on to another tournament. There was also a Japanese tournament this weekend. It has been a fair bit. And it had a very interesting team, right? We got to see, yet again, Pawmot plus setup being very powerful. And this one actually used an interesting mon in Florges. And Florges has a very unique niche where, thanks to Flower Veil, all the grass types around you are protected from burns, protected from stat drops and the like, which basically means your Volcarona is able to set up way safer, because generally the way you beat a Volcarona setup is through this like snarling it, right? And thanks to having that ability, this Terra Grass Quiver Dance next to Florges, it actually creates a setup where it can be a bit problematic. And also interesting as well, the floor just has a mirror herb plus skill swap. So you can skill swap and get your grass. So you can move your little flower veil around to the Volcarona to keep it for endgame. You can take away abilities like unaware, so your setup can actually get kills. And you can take away any ability that you deem too problematic. Though I feel like that didn't really... It's also good for Dondozo, notably. Because you can theoretically skill swap the Dondozo, take away its unaware, so your setup can actually kill it. And it also has Mirror Herb, which makes this a very decent direct response to how Dondozo plays. Because the fairy typing, order up your immune, you can pollen puff your setup next to you so the Dondozo can't take you out. You have this floor just has a very dedicated Dondozo answer, and it's this very interesting of how that can operate into a Dondozo team. And you also see it using Play Rough for damage instead of Spirit Break, which is pretty interesting. I'm not sure if that's worth, though it is pretty valuable in the stuff like Annihilape, where you don't have to worry about proccing a Defiant, for example. And that can be pretty useful. And we actually don't see the Revival Blessing on the Pawmot. That was wrong. They actually decided to use Ice Punch for Iron Fist. I think that makes sense on this team, because if you notice, there's not really many ways to deal with Garchomp with this, and you already have the Sash on the meowscarada. So using Pawmot instead for its this insane type coverage, because like Electric plus Fighting, and then having Ice as well, you basically hit all of the metagame for either super effective or neutral with that kind of typing coverage. And you have the Terra Electric on it as well, which is pretty cool, pretty cool. And we also see Terra Blast Fire on Dragapult, which I do like that a fair bit, because you resist Golden Go, and then you just hit it with the Terra Blast Fire, and you can also have this pure Phantom Force, and this go like Dragonar's Phantom Force, and this go damage as well. So it gives them a lot of like decent options into auto matchups for like immediate damage, and for stuff that's like generally pretty scary. And yeah, for the rest of the cut, we do see another Abomasnow Annihilape team. And yet again, Screen's Annihilape is very scary in general, and that's a concept we actually see as well with the Grimmsnarl Annihilape plus Azu Amoonguss yet again by 1456 Pokey. We see Campfly with Sand plus Murkrow stuff. We actually do see an interesting approach to Garganacl with Murkrow, which is actually pretty curious. Garganacl is there by West Queen. Yeah. Interesting stuff, interesting stuff. And this is a team, actually. Oh, the rental's private. But I can tell you like some of the moves. It's AV, it's Iron Head, Cowtoe Cleave, Sucker Punch. I believe that's Salt Cure, Wide Guard, Protect, Recover on the Garganacl. So the Garganacl is essentially acting as a little Wide Guard tool, and it's not acting like necessarily as much of a win con. He's also using Loaded Dice on his Baxcalibur, so you can get like the 4 to 5 hits on your Icicle Spears. And then he just has like Dragon Dance. Oh, he just has Glaive Rush, Icicle Spear, Protect, and you have like a backup ice move as well, and Ice Shard, just to do a fair bit of damage, and you have the Loaded Dice. This is the first time I really see Loaded Dice where you get taken advantage of. And then the Murkrow has Haze, and then to stop the Baxcalibur from being reduced. So you can always guarantee that you do decent damage with your Icicle Spears. And using Terra Fire, so you actually have like the resist to fire. So if anyone procs your ability, they won't be doing damage to you, really. And we see the Golden Go as well with this Make It Rain, Shadow Ball, Protect, and I believe Focus Blast. And then Flower Trick, Knock Off, Protect, Sucker Punch on the Meowscarada. So yeah, that's all the moves there. The Foul Play, Tailwind, Taunt on the Murkrow as well, I believe. Of course, I don't know Japanese, so it's kind of hard for me to reason through it. I'm using a bit of mental logic, so this probably could be fact-checked a bit. But I do believe I'm right on like the general movesets on this. I'm going to check through some of these as well, as if we have any more team information or not, or rental codes if anyone wants to actually go about using these teams. And I'll also link the Liberty Note stuff as well in the description. It is Japanese, so we can't really like glean through it as well as I am the silly American, but we can get through some of it. We can get through some of it. Oh yeah, there's the team. There's the team. But yeah, okay, we have the rental for this one too. So you can go ahead and try this one out. The Annihilate, the Terra Fire. You get the Bulk Up, Drain Punch, Raise Fist. the Grimstone, you got the Spear Break, the Reflect Light Screen. I don't know what the dark move is, but we are actually able to go in game and get this rental code, and you can see some of the moves yourself. And the Arcanine actually taking advantage of eject button. And I believe this is actually a pair. I think that might be a Paris Song Azu as an alternate win condition as well. Instead of using it straight up, like, yeah, the fake out plus Paris Song, and you just kind of go in. And you have the Arcanine to eject button out to give them Moongift. So you have this kind of backup core, where you just go like hard little Perish. And then you also have this Annihilape and Grimmsnarl as your general win condition. So an interesting balance for sure. And not like the other teams where we saw Azu plus Annihilape, where they were this like belly drum Azu. We instead see it with a Paris Song to create like an alternate win condition plus Gothitelle. And that's another way you can use Goth to like decent effect. But yeah, here's the winning team again. We'll link some of the VODs as well in the description. And finally, the last thing we're going to talk about real quick is the Oakville local, where we had this pretty standard kind of tournament. You just see the Talonflame Golden Go mode plus Hydreigon, and you have Dondozo Tatsugiri as well, and you have a little Grimmsnarl. A little quirky Grimmsnarl. And then Megamite using a little Rain Cord, but actually not using Palafin with it. We see Pavilion get laid. And we see Fiona with the Volcarona. Because I do think Volcarona is a better Mon, again, than it's giving credit for. And I think that's about all the events we really need to cover here. Again, support VGC PokePace. They do a good job like showcasing all of these events, all these teams. And you can see this one as well. Another tournament won by Tyranitar Lyncanroc. Yeah, I think that's the general idea for this video. If you want more of this kind of content, and if you actually want to see us review these gameplays live, let us know in the comments. Because like I could also stream all us looking through all this footage, getting through some of this analysis. Because I did actually go through all of this footage on my own to try and like just get a general idea of how some of these teams operate. And I did go through enough of this footage before we actually publish this video and work on it. Because basically my Monday has just been look through footage, look through all these games, and look through like this enough so I have like enough information to show you guys. And then like just looking through the analysis and all that stuff as well. Which is a fair bit of work, So let me know in the comments if you would actually want to see us do this live on stream and like watch it with me and we can like work through that together. I don't know if it's like the best stream content, but it's something that I would be doing anyways, right? So it might be kind of worthwhile. And if you want to see the VOD of the Nino Pokebros tournament, I will have that linked in the description as well. This my whole VOD, my whole tournament run. It is on our VOD channel already. And yeah, thank you all for watching. This leave a little comment, like, all that stuff. And let us know if there's any team specifically from this weekend you think we should cover. I.e., we did do actually a Gardevoir video on last week for a specific team. So if there's any like specific tournament teams where you want us to have like that kind of video where we just say, oh, this team won tournament, let's cover it and let's play, that could be an option as well. And yeah, that's it for this week's of Metagame Monday. We'll have our team report on our Abomasnow Cetitan team next week, and yeah, that's it for now. Later.